Hi everybody, welcome to the grade 10 or grade 9-10 Computer Science 20S remote learning tutorial. I hope to keep this in the 1 hour maximum time frame. I hope to be well under that. So if you see here, right on the Computer Science 20S page, the remote learning instructions, there's a document right here which also allows you to go step by step through this tutorial, step by step, and complete it in that format, right? So it's all there for you. Okay, everything you need to do this tutorial, but let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start with Visual Studio. We're going to create a brand new project. Okay, and from here, we're going to build our design, and then I'm going to show you the code that goes with it. Obviously, I'm going to do my best to type this within that 1 hour time frame. There's lots of comments that I'm going to be copying and pasting into the code. You can find those comments in the document. All right, so this is going to be our tutorial, and I'll say it's the CS20S tutorial. That's just the name I'm going to give it right now. Create it. We'll go from there. So as that loads up, remember this tutorial is a substitute for the unit called looping, which we're not going to have time to quite go through the normal way we would normally. However, if you do want to go through and learn all the content of looping at a slower pace on your own, you can certainly do that. You can still go down here to content, and you can still go down to looping and look at part 1, part 2, and for each of those you can read about looping, or you can watch my normal video that explains that. You can also go through the examples if you want. There are 2 looping examples you can go through. But let's get back to the tutorial, okay? All right, so first thing I'm going to do is build this thing. So for this thing, you're going to use some objects that you didn't use in some of the other units. But let's start with what you need. You're going to need a label for at the top where it explains things. Beside it, you're going to need another label. And then beside that, you're going to need this drop-down box that you can use to select things. And if you're not finding stuff in the common controls, you can also then move to all the Windows controls. So everything here. So for example, one of the things we're going to need is something called a list box. Okay. And then the other thing we're going to need is something called a combo box. The combo box you can recognize as a drop-down box. Okay, we're going to need a button, and we're going to need 2 buttons. Okay, so I no longer need the toolbox. The buttons, the combo box, which is what this thing is, and this thing will make sure you get the right object. This is called a list box. Okay, it's not a text box. It's something called a list box, and you'll kind of see why once we get into this. And then a couple buttons. All right, so I no longer need that. Now I'm going to change some properties. So this thing, I'm going to have it say, welcome to prize grab. Prize grab. This thing, I'm going to have it say, select how many prizes to collect. And then beside it will be the combo box. I'm just going to move that over a little bit. In my first button, I'm just going to say create unique prize values. And then below that will be the big list box. And then the final button will say start the game. Okay, so that's the basic design for this thing, and it's called prize grab, so I'm just going to put that in there as the title or the text of the form. And just a couple quick things with the form. I'm going to have it start in the center of the screen, and for the form's border style, I'm just going to reduce it down to just a fixed tool window, so it's very simple. I'm going to run it real quick to see how it looks. It should look good. Okay, from my design standpoint, that's all I really need to do for this prize grab in this sense. This will be the majority of the designing you do for this whole tutorial. There it is, looking good. Okay. And now I'm going to go in and name all my objects. That is crucial. So again, if you're following the tutorial here, you can see all the names listed here of what you're going to call everything. And that's really important, that you have everything named the way you want it to be named. Okay. So this guy we're going to name LBL title. This guy we're going to name LBL select. The combo box we're going to name, I'm going to call mine CBO for combo box, and amount is what I'm going to call it. This button, create you, so it's a button, so I'm just going to name it BTN create. Okay, since I'm doing buttons, I might as well do this one. This one here is BTN start. And then the list box, okay, list box I'm going to start with LST. A lot of students might think that the name I'm giving this is 1ST, but that's actually a lowercase l. LST prizes. Okay, checking to make sure everything is named. BTN create, BTN start, CBO amount, LBL select, LBL title, and LST prizes. Okay, I'm also going to name my form FRM start. Okay, I have everything I need now. Now it's time to start coding form 1. Okay, I'm actually going to start with form load. So I'm going to find that empty spot on the form. Usually down at the bottom is the best place to start. I'm going to double click it, which should jump me right to the code for form load. We learned about form load in the conditional statements unit, but just a reminder, that's what it is when the form first starts. Before I write any code for form load, I'm going to go up to under the words public partial class, and here I'm going to create my global variables. So this is one comment. Okay, I don't expect you to do all the comments that you see in the tutorial, but they are all there for you to look at in the document itself. So if you go to the document, this document right here, and you scroll through, you will see the comments. Okay, so I don't expect you obviously to put this comment in here with all these fancy slashes, but I do expect you to put your name and stuff like that like you would with any normal assignment. So now we're at the section for global variables. Okay, const, it's a constant, integer max equals 100. The maximum is going to be 100. What this is, it's the largest number of prizes for the game. So that's the maximum, is 100. Now we're going to get to the form load code. Okay, so for here, you're going to first learn about looping. When the form first loads up, I want to create a variable that's going to be used for looping. Int number equals max. Okay, number is going to be the variable that I'm going to be using for looping. Looping just is very similar to conditional statements, as it says up here in some of the comments and stuff. So what looping does is it causes the code to keep repeating itself. So the loop is written as such: while number is greater than 0, and then it has this. So in a lot of ways, the loop looks almost identical. Actually, if I just took out this word and put in the word if, it would look exactly like the if statement of our previous unit. Exactly, okay? But the loop forces the code to keep looping over and over again, okay? All right, so now I'm inside of the block of code of my loop, okay? What I want to do is I want to put the number into my combo box, CBO amount. That's the name of my combo box. Now putting it into a combo box is a little different. Dot items, dot add, and then a round bracket. I'm going to put nothing at first, and then attach to that my number. So the number is getting added into the combo box. I realize this code is a little different than the way it's done with a label or something like that. You can find more explanation of how to work with combo boxes if you look at looping part 1 in the notes, but because of time, I don't expect you to do that. I just kind of expect you just to go through this tutorial. Okay, so now I'm in the loop. I now need to take that number and reduce it by 1. So I'm going to use a little shorthand for that. I'm going to say number minus minus. This means number equals number minus 1. Okay? And then I'm finally going to do the finish of this by also putting the value from the combo box into the combo box itself at the start. So I can use a combo box like a text box. I can say dot text equals this thing plus max. And before I do any more code, I'm just going to show you what that looks like at this point. So I'm going to run it. And this combo box now has the number 100 in it, which is the max. But if I was to click down, all 100 numbers have been added to that combo box using that loop. That's what it did. It put all 100 of them in there. So that's a basic example of what looping does. All right, now we're going to code the button called create, or create the unique prizes. Okay, so the first code we're going to do is going to clear out the list box. So for that, lst prizes, that's the name of the list box, dot items dot clear. But I do have to put 2 round brackets and a semicolon. Again, more information about this if you look through the notes. Now I'm going to do some random number stuff. So as you saw in the last unit, I'm going to create a random equals new random. Okay, that generates random numbers. Now, what I'm going to do is the user is going to select something. Int amount, what they're going to select is what I'm going to convert dot to an integer. Again, a lot of the same code we've done throughout the course. What's in the combo box called amount, whatever text is in there now, so dot text. I'm going to read the text out of the combo box, whatever they've selected. Okay? Now what I'm going to use is the second type of loop that we didn't have time to learn, called the for loop. For loop is used for counting. It's a little more tricky on how to do it. Here's the nice way you can write a for loop. I have the tip right here in the comments. To write this for loop, type FOR, and then press the tab key on your keyboard twice. Now, I do have to make one change. Instead of the word length, I'm going to change it to the word amount, which is the name of our variable from up here. So as you can see, the for loop is a much more technical looking loop. It's using the variable I for the looping, but that's what a for loop looks like. If you want to learn more about for loops, take a look at the content of part 2 of the looping unit. All right, so now I'm going to generate a random prize value. And to do that, I'm going to say int value equals random dot, and it's the next random number between 1, comma, and my maximum, but I'm going to take the maximum up by multiplying it by 2. That's going to give me a random prize value. However, I don't want that prize value to be the same as any other prize values I've already created. So to do this, I'm actually going to nest another for loop inside of this for loop. So FOR tab tab. This time I'm going to switch the variable from I to j. Switch it in all 3 places. And instead of the word length, I need to know how many things I'm doing. So I'm going to say lst, name my list box, dot items dot count. It counts how many are in the list box for me. So now what am I going to do inside this for loop? Well, I'm going to select an item in that list box by saying lst prizes dot set selected bracket to be j, that's the looping variable, and I'm going to set it to true. Select this thing, set it to true. This is some weird code, but it essentially selects something in the list box. Now that it's selected, I can get the text out of it, which is what I want to do next. I'm going to get the text out of that list box item. So to do that, I'm going to make a string called content, and it's equal to what's in the list box dot, I'm going to get the item text from LST prizes dot selected item. Again, some tricky code here. Use autocomplete to help you write it, but you have the reference sheet here that as you're going through this and you're looking at this code, you have it right here in front of you to help you to get through the tutorial. This is some complicated code, but it's going to do what we want it to do. It's going to select it and it's going to get the text out of it. Well, now that I have the text, I'm going to convert it to a number. We've done this before. This is easy. Int item, easy if you've been working in this. Convert dot to an integer 32 of that content. Okay. Now what do we do? Well, now, believe it or not, we're going to have yet another nested loop. A loop inside of a loop inside of a loop. This loop is going to be a while loop, back to the other style of loop. Well, item equals value. Well, those two things are exactly the same. I'm going to make the loop keep changing it over and over again. I'm going to keep regenerating a new random number over and over again until they're different. So the loop will just keep making a new random number, a new random number, a new random number. And all I need to do that, I can actually steal this code from up here. Value, I don't want to steal the word int though, but just this part of the code right here. Popped in right there. And it'll keep making it over and over again. Now I'm after that bracket, but still inside the loop. Now that I have that thing, I'm going to add that to the list box. LST prizes dot items dot add nothing plus my value. Okay. With that code in place, and that was quite a bit there since we hit the create button. It's quite a bit of code. If I took out all the comments that I pasted in from the sheet itself, it's a little bit less code than you think it is if I take all the comments out, which you can see I'm kind of doing right now, right? I'm taking all these comments out. That's all the code it was right there. And actually there's an extra space there and there. So this is the code for this button right here. It starts here, ends here. So it isn't as much code as you think it is. Okay, just like up here, it looks like a lot of code, but once I get rid of all the spaces, once I get rid of all the comments, it isn't as much code as, oops, took out a little bit too much there. Okay, it isn't as much code as you think it is. So here I can show you kind of all the code from the start, and then this, it's not as much code as you think. Okay, it is all there for you. And now, without coding the last button, I'm just going to show you if I select, say, 42 unique prize values. Oh, what happened there? Erg. Okay. So let me put the comments and code back in. I might have accidentally deleted something I shouldn't have. There we go. So there's all that code, and let me get all the other code to make sure I didn't accidentally delete something I should have. There we go. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. So now it's generating those 89 unique prize values, putting them in the list box, checking to make sure they're not duplicates of any of the other ones. It does all the work for you, and then you can scroll through all the different ones you wanted. Now, 89 is a lot. If I actually just said 14, it's going to take a lot less time to put 14 of them in there. If I said 5 of them, it's going to take even less time to generate 5 unique prize values. So each of these is some number, but no two are the same. Okay? So that's what the code does at this point. Now we're going to code the start the game button. Okay? So when we start the game, we're going to check to make sure that they have at least one prize value generated. To do that, I'm going to say if lst prizes dot items dot count. The count, if it equals 0, that means they haven't put any in there. I count 0 of them. Then I'm going to use a message box. Again, stuff we've been working on. Show the user generate values first. So I'm going to say that to them. If they haven't put anything in there, if they run this and try to hit start the game and they haven't generated any prize values, it's going to tell them that. But if they have generated prize values, else, then we're going to move on to the next piece of code. Okay, oops. And this piece of code, oh, that's why, because it stopped. This piece of code for else, okay, is going to be some extras. So putting in a big comment here, extras is not formally part of this course. So you've essentially seen everything you could from the looping unit in this first 20 minutes of this tutorial. Everything I'm doing right now is not something you have to do for the tutorial unless you're looking to get 100%. At this point, you can stop your tutorial and be done with it and get a good solid 70% at this point. If you want to go higher than 70% to get to almost that 100 level, then you are going to need to continue this, okay? If you're not, all you have to do is add the line, as it says right here, application.exit. And that's all the program would do, is at this point, it would exit the program. But if you wish to continue, then there's some more code to go from this point forward on. So, here is the extras piece moving forward. We're going to modify a globals variable in something called a globals class. So as you can see here at this point, we're going to go to project, add class, and this is not something we're going to add here. It's just called a class, and we're going to name this thing globals, like a global variable. And it's going to look like this, okay? The globals code is placed here between these two curly brackets, okay? And we're going to add some stuff to this. The first thing we're going to add is a really global variable. So it's like any other global variable, but we're going to add the words public and static to the front of it. This essentially just means it shares it. Int prize count equals 0. So the count of all the prizes is 0. Then we're going to have another global variable which tracks the score of all the prizes collected. So I'm going to essentially do the same thing, use a little copy paste, but this one I'm going to name hero score. It's the score of all the prizes our hero has collected. Then I'm going to also track how many the enemy has collected. So I'm going to repeat this, copy, paste, and I'm going to change this to enemy score. How many did the enemy collect? And then something even more extra that even not only goes beyond what you'd normally do in this course, but takes a look at something you're going to study if you take Computer Science 30S. It's a public, static, int, and then you're going to put 2 squared off brackets here because this is creating something called an array. An array is something you study in the grade 10 course. So I'm going to call this prize values, okay? And it's equal to a new int, more square brackets, and the number 100 is going to go inside of that. So this is something unique here that is something to do with something called an array. You're not going to find any notes about this in the grade 10 course. It really touches on something from the grade 11 course. So it's definitely extras to the stuff you're learning here. Okay, that's it for globals. Now I'm going to return back to Form 1 where I left off. And back at Form 1, I'm now going to do another loop here. Hang on. Jumping ahead of the game. Before I do that, I'm now going to say globals dot prize count. So now that I've made globals, it knows what it is. Equals convert dot to and int 32. What's in CBO amount dot text. So whatever's in there, I'm converting it so I know how many prizes to remember across multiple forms. Now I'm going to loop through all the prizes. So FOR tab tab. This time I'm going to change this to globals dot prize count, the thing I just got. Okay, so now I'm in a for loop again. So I'm going to once again select the item in the list box. LST prizes dot set selected to be I, comma, true. Okay, again, we're in all extras at this point. This is nothing that you needed to learn in this course. You've had to learn the looping stuff, but I want to make this tutorial something a little more interesting. String content equals. So at this point you realize I'm doing the same code I did up here. So yes, you could have easily selected this, and that would have been the exact same code as we would have been doing here. Same code. Okay, now what we're going to do is convert that to a number, what's sitting in there, and store it in our global array. So globals dot prize values square bracket I equals convert dot to an integer that content. Okay, some tricky stuff there, but that's our for loop. Just after the for loop, here's what's going to be interesting now. We're now going to go up to project, and we're going to add another form to our project. We can leave it called form 2, that's fine. I'll just add it. See what it does? It builds you another form. So now I can jump back to form 1. If you were to look at your solution explorer now, you have not only a form 1, but you now also have a form 2, and you have this thing called globals. So you have more things that now your project could go into. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use code to create that form 2. So form 2 equals new form 2. Very much like random equals new random. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide my current form. So for that I use the keyword this dot hide, believe it or not. Bracket, bracket, semicolon. I don't have to write that code. It kind of knows what to do when it sees that code. And then the final thing I'm going to do on this form is show the next form. So now I say form2 dot show. So it's a show and hide code to show one form and hide the other form. So this completes form 1. I'm just going to test it. And again, some of this was extra. But I'm going to say, give me 18 unique numbers. Now start the game. Here it would now jump over to form 2 instead of using form 1 anymore. Okay? If you're curious about how to use multiple forms and jumping back and forth, you can see that on our content page, but this would be under extra content. There's usually some tutorials I do, simpler tutorials, that show how to jump from one form to the next. Unfortunately, again, with this here, we don't have time for it. So we've now reached the half-hour point on this tutorial. We've been doing it for half an hour, and now we've already surpassed what I expected just in general, and now we're going to go into the form 2, but again, this would only be for those who are wanting to go that extra mile for this tutorial. So with form 1 done, okay, the design's done, the code's done, I'm actually going to close those, just so I don't have to look at them. I'm also done globals, so I'm going to close that, and now I can just focus on form 2. If I did have to go back to form 1, here's where I would have to use this thing called the Solution Explorer, and I would have to double-click form 1 again. I'd say double-click it, then I'm back here, and I could view the code if I needed to get back to the code. Or I could double-click a button, that would work too. But I don't want to have too many tabs open here. I just want form 1 and form 2. I'll view the code in case I need the code, but really I need to start with the design itself. Whew, okay. So if you were following through this all of this is also on the tutorial sheet. It shows you how you add a class, shows you with globals how to add it, and now we're on to form 2. As you can see, our design is going to be very simple. Just 2 labels, one called enemy, one called hero. But then some interesting things here called timers that we're going to use. Okay, so let's start with our toolbox. Let's put a label on there. We'll just start with one label. Sorry, not label, a picture box. Oh, no, it is a label. My apologies. It is a label. Put a label on there. Before I go and put the second label, I'm going to make some changes to this label. As it says on the design sheet here, there's some changes you can make to these labels to really make them look the way they're supposed to there. And I'm just going to show you this. Wouldn't really matter, but I'm going to change it so it says the word hero inside the label. And what I'm going to do is set auto size to false so I can stretch it out. Okay. I'm going to actually set the size specifically by going here to size. And instead of 109.85, I'm actually going to set the width to 100 and the height to 100. So I can actually change the size using the properties window specifically. I mean, yeah, I can drag in with my mouse, but this is a little more specific. I'm going to set the text to align to the center, and I'm going to actually add a border to this. So under border style, I'm going to say fixed. So there's the border for my label called the hero. I'm going to copy and paste that, so I now have two labels, but I'm going to change this one from the word hero to the word enemy. And I'm going to try it again and spell it correct. Enemy, there we go. So there are my two labels for the form itself. Up here on the text, I'm going to put the words time remaining, colon, and then 120 seconds. That's going to be my time remaining. I'm also going to start this one in the center of the screen. Maybe I'll make my form a little bit bigger. I'm going to set the form border style again to a fixed tool window. Again, these are not necessary things you need to do, but there they are. Okay. Now the new things, these things called timers. Doesn't matter where you put it because it actually goes down here. It's not something you see on your design. We're going to need 4 of these timers. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Timers work on time, but they are essentially like loops. So I'm going to pull up the first one and I'm going to start making some property changes to the timer. As you can see, timers do not have a ton of properties, just a few. And actually only 2 of them matter. Well, 3 if you count the names of these timers. So the name of this timer, TMR for timer, countdown. It's going to count down. Now when I did that, I got to move these over a little bit so I can see them each. Whatever. Okay. Countdown. So the property that matters is enabled. That means the timer's running or not. So I'm going to set that to true, so it is running. And the other timer property that matters is interval. Intervals are measured in milliseconds. There are 1,000 milliseconds in 1 second of real time. So this countdown timer will be running every 1 second. Okay, and like a loop, it just keeps running until enabled is set to false. So there's countdown. The next timer we're going to create is going to be for our hero. So TMR hero. This interval will leave it at 100, so it's going to run faster than a second, every 1/10 of a second, but I'm going to set enabled to true. Our next timer is for the enemy. TMR enemy. Also 100 milliseconds, also set to true. And then the final one, I'm just going to call TMR change. This is the timer that's going to be used to have our enemy change directions. And it's going to happen every 5 seconds. So I'm going to set the interval to 5,000 milliseconds. Okay? You can even see at the bottom here, it tells you that the interval of a timer is elapsing in milliseconds. Okay, that's it for our design. So it's got those 4 timers and these 2 labels. But there's something else we need to code into it that we'll get to in a minute. Okay? What we got to start with though is the code in the timer, or sorry, the code for form load again. So we're just going to double click the form to get to the form load code. At this point, I'm going to hide those things there. Okay. So once again, this is extras code here. We've got just under half an hour to finish this tutorial in an hour. And once again, we're going to start with some global variables. Okay? Some global variables for our new form 2. Okay? So actually, we're going to start with some constants. Some constants that are going to be used for movement later in the code. So the first constant is an integer called amount, and it's going to be 10. 10 is the amount of pixels that we're going to be moving around the screen. Our next constant, also, let's back that up and try that again. Also an integer, represents movement up. And I'm just going to make that the number 1. 1 represents up. But then I'm going to copy and paste that 4 times. For down, left, and right. These will be the 4 movements that I can do in this particular game. Up, down, left, and right. Now they can't all be 1. So I'm going to just make them 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is just so that I can use the words later, up, down, left, right, instead of trying to remember which number is which. It's going to make my code life easier in the future. So amount is really how much I move. And then these 4 represent directions I'm going to be moving. Okay, now some regular global variables. Something to track how much time's left in the game. Int time. And I'm going to start it at 60. Okay. Then a variable to track which direction I'm moving. And I've made direction a number now. So int hero direction. But I'm going to start it at 0. So I'm not going to be moving any direction at the start. I'm also going to do the exact same thing for my enemy. So the same direction will be used for my enemy, which direction the enemy is moving. Okay? Then, eventually the enemy will have a new direction to go. So I'm going to make a variable for that. A variable to keep track of which new direction that enemy is going to go. But for now, I'm just going to make it, it's a global variable, I make it 0. I'm going to need a random number generator. So there'll be some randomness in our code. So a random number generator. For that, once again, random equals new random. Oh, come on, Walks. Type better. There we go. Okay. One more global variable. And this one is definitely extras. This has nothing to do with this Computer Science 20S course. It's another array. But this time, an array of labels, believe it or not. I'm going to call it prizes equals a new array of labels. So just like we do in our design. And for this, to know how many labels, I go to globals dot prize count. How many are stored in that prize count variable will represent how many labels I actually have to make. Okay, all of this is available in the tutorial notes as well in the document. As you can see, all of the same stuff is there. And now we're going to write code for form load. Okay, so I mentioned it briefly before. The word this refers to the form. So what I'm going to do is change the background color of my form to be color.black. So right now, if I run form 2, and it's hard because I have to go through form 1 to get to form 2. So I'm just going to make this as simple as possible and just make a few unique prizes. It right now is set that background color to black. Now I know you could do that with the designer, but you can, whatever you do with the designer, you can do with code. Okay? So now what we're going to do is change a bunch of label stuff that we actually did, but I'll just show you the 2 lines of code that you guys probably won't have to do if you've been following this tutorial. These 2 lines here did exactly what we did by setting the border styles. Okay, the widths and heights that we did, okay, are done that way. Now I'm getting an error because I did forget an important step. I forgot to name my labels, so I better do that. The labels are named LBL Hero and LBL Enemy. My apologies, I forgot to name. We did also name our timer, so that's good. But there now I've named stuff. Form 2 doesn't need to be named, so we'll leave that one alone. And so then now you can see that's taken the error away. Okay? I can also I can also repeat the code to align the text, which again we didn't need to because we did that with the designer. Let's do something else with the designer that we can do with code. In the label enemy, let's change the background color, okay, of the enemy and the background color of the hero, both of these background colors, to be white. Okay? If I wanted to do that with code, I could, okay, by just doing this. The same thing I just did in code, I could do with the designer. So this is making a bunch of changes to the design using code instead of necessarily using the designer. So the designer and the code are interconnected to one another. What you can do with the designer, you can do with your code. Okay? So what I want to do now is something that's a little trickier that I want to do with code. I want to take LBL Hero dot, I'm going to change its left. Left is where it's positioning itself. And to do that, I'm going to say it equals, I take this, the form, dot width, the width of the form, and divide it by 2, and then I'm going to subtract 50. I'm going to do the exact same thing with my enemy. So the exact same code with LBL enemy. Okay? For the top, LBL hero dot top, that positions it up and down. Left positions it right to left. Top positions it between the top and the bottom. And I'm going to put my hero at 50 pixels. For my enemy, that's a little more complicated. The enemy dot top, I'm going to again do a mathematical equation. I'm going to take this dot height, the height of the form, and I'm going to subtract about 200 pixels. And once again, I'm going to show you how this is going to use code to actually position the two labels into kind of starting positions in the center, at the top, and the bottom. So it's kind of a nicer way to do it because I don't know how big you're going to make your forms. Okay? Okay, now we got to accelerate our pace if we're going to get done here in the 1 hour. So now the next piece, all extras, is once again to use some timer properties. So what I'm going to do is change the intervals of the timer and start them running. You don't have to do this code because we did this using the designer. Okay? But now I'm going to use a loop. So this code is in the document, but if you've been following this video, we did it using the designer. So now I'm going to run that for loop. And I'm going to go up to globals dot prize count. And I'm going to now use some extra code to actually use code to make a label. Code. Label, usually use the designer for this, equals new label. As I've said now a couple times, whatever you do with the designer, you can do with code. So why don't I use it to build all the same properties, the same ones that I did kind of up here, the same ones I would do if I was using the designer. So the border style, the width, the height, the text align, all that stuff. And now I'm going to put the prize value inside that thing. So I'm going to say label dot, okay, I'm going to say the text of that label equals nothing plus what's in globals dot what's in prize values, which is my weird array, square bracket I. The array goes to spot I, which is either spot 0 or something around whatever the prize count was. It pulls that value out of there, okay? Now I have to position my label. I can't just have it nowhere. So I have to position the label, and I want to put it into a random spot. So to do that, what I'm going to do is say label dot left. Oops. So the same stuff I did kind of up here when I was changing left and top. Left equals, and yes, part 2 of looping talks about left and top if you were able to do the game called Rocket Racing, which moves things around. Random dot next. It's a random number between 0, comma, and this dot width, the width of the form, minus LBL enemy dot width. So whatever the width of my label is. I will do basically the exact same code with top, but now it's not width, it's height. Both here and here. I'm changing the height of it, okay? So this will position a label randomly on the form, but there's a little bit extra code I will need to do with that. I'm going to generate a random color. So once again, I'm going to use a little bit of cheating here. Copy paste. I'm going to create a red, green, and blue integer, also using random, but random number between 0 and 256. And then I'm going to set that label's background color using this neat code from ARGB. The RGB stands for red, green, blue, for a red, green, and blue color for that label. Okay? Then I'm going to take that label and I'm going to add it to the form using this weird code here to add the label, because I created a label just in code, and now I'm going to add it onto my form. And then one last little extra piece of code inside our loop. I'm going to put this new label into my array of labels. Now, just showing you what this does is now if I say I want 12 labels with unique prize values, it's going to put 12 unique labels randomly around my form, each one with its own little random prize value inside of it. Neat. Okay. That was neat. But now again, some more extras. The next line of code, which is put after that bracket of the for loop, is the word change direction. And this is weird because there is no code for change direction. So you're once again going to see a preview of something you do in the grade 11 computer science course called making a method. And to do this in Visual Studio, it can help you do it for you. You can either click on this thing that looks like a little light bulb that would appear when your mouse is on top of this word change direction. When you click on the light bulb, it will say generate this method. So you can click that. Click it, click the light bulb, it can appear in different places, generate method, and there it adds the code for you and gets rid of the error. Okay, now we got to write some code for this thing here. We're going to get rid of this line. This doesn't do anything. And instead, we're going to put some extras code in here for sure, and another loop. Okay, this is a weird loop. It starts with the word do, has curly brackets, and then has the word while. That is my 10-minute warning. New direction equals enemy direction with a semicolon at the end. This is the while loop called the do while loop. It does go over this in the looping part 1 notes. It's a weird, rarely used loop. And what I'm going to do inside this is pick a random direction. So because I have a lot of global variables, I can just say new direction equals random dot next 1, 5. It's one of 4 possible directions. Okay? Now once the loop is done, that new direction will get placed inside of my original direction. So enemy direction equals new direction. Oops. Semicolon. And that's going to be our code for change direction. Okay? You won't really see this happening with anything yet, because the next piece of code we're going to get to, we go back to our design, and this is a little weird. You're going to select your form, you're going to open up properties, and at the top of the properties window, you're going to click on that lightning bolt. You're then going to scroll down to where it says load. Okay? What this means is, pass load. You're going to scroll down to key, so under K, key down. So under form 2, when you click the lightning bolt, go to the word key down and double click that word, key down. It will jump you to the code that means when the user presses a key, what should I do? So this is definitely extras as well, okay? So a lot of extra code here about how this works. But what we're going to put here is an if statement. If E dot key code equals key keys dot up. This code essentially means the key they just pressed was the up key. The hero direction equals up. I'm going to now set the direction to be up. I'm going to copy and paste that, make it an else if. You'll also notice I skipped the curly brackets. I'm getting a little fancy here. I'm going to change this to down, okay? And I'm going to change this to the word down. So now I'm saying, what if they press the down key and go down? And then 2 more keys to deal with, left and right. Right here, left here, and I'm going to change it over here as well. Here it's not all uppercase, it's left and right. And again, please use the document as a guide to get this code exactly correct there. Okay, time for our timers. Starting with the countdown timer. Double click the timer for countdown. Coding a timer is just like coding a button. You double click it, that's how you get to it. However, timers are invisible, okay? So what are we going to do? We're going to change the form time that's remaining. So this dot text, that's the text on the form, equals the words time remaining, colon, quote, timer remaining. Come on, Walks, we're going to finish this on time or not? Plus time. That's our global variable. Now I want to have the time go down by 1. I'm going to use a little shorthand for that. Time minus minus. This is in the extras content. Now we're going to check to see if we're out of time. And if we are, it's game over. To check it, we're going to use an if statement. If time equals 0, we're going to once again use something a little extra, another neat method called game over, bracket, bracket, semicolon. Since this doesn't exist, we're going to use the light bulb and generate it. And now it does exist and we can write it in. Okay? So we're going to replace this. So that's again one of those little extras things. So what are we going to do? We're going to turn off all our timers. So the same code we used to turn on the timers, we're going to use to turn off the timers. But instead of making it true, we're going to make them all false. Oops, and don't forget your semicolon there. All right. Now we're going to do a fancy message box, just a good old message box. But we're going to add this weird thing in there to create a line break inside the message box. Please use the code, follow it closely in the document. But this is what it does when it uses this little weird /n to create a line break in there. Okay? Oh, I just realized I made a big mistake. Up here under game over, I wanted to say the word time's up. Those words are happening. The time is up. So right here in those round brackets, I make something called string state. The state of this game over is time's up. So I put up my message box, and now, as you know, I can shut everything down. Now, I don't want to show you that because I'd have to wait the 30 seconds for it to do this. But you'll see that that will work once your game is going. All right, now the code for our hero, the timer for hero. So this is a bit of extras code as well, and it uses a very similar if statement to the one we did before. But this time I'm saying if the hero direction is up, I'm actually going to move my label by adjusting the top of my label or the left of my label by adding or subtracting the amount, which is a global variable we already had. Okay, definitely some extras code there. Definitely want to kind of follow as you get through the documents to that point. And again, I'm really worried about time here, so I'm going to really speed up the amount of copying and pasting I'm doing here. Okay, now the next piece of extras. What if the user's gone out of bounds on this? So again, a little bit of code. I cheated and copied and pasted right out of the document there. And if I go out of bounds, it's game over. So I can reuse the code I said with game over. And then we're going to make another little extras method called check for prizes. I'm going to use this to generate the method. Okay. Again, I know I'm accelerating my pace here. I know this is all for those kids who are going that extra mile on this example. But we're very close to getting done in a way. Okay, so now I'm going to suggest I go right to where I had this, and right here under check for prizes, which is exactly the code I just put, I'm going to remove this, and instead I'm going to grab this code right off the website here. Aren't I? Yeah. So I'm going to just copy and paste that code right off the website. Cheating, cheating, cheating. Oh, I guess I can't. Well, I'm going to cheat and just copy it right off the screen you kids can't see right here. I think you guys would be able to copy it. And if not, type away. There it is. There's all the check for prizes code. And then I'm going to go back to my design, timer enemy. I'm going to go get the code right off of there, put it in there, which again you can do right here, timer enemy. And then finally, back to my design, the timer for change, and it's really just one line of code. And there it is, to change the direction. Okay, and so that, oh, we got a little bug. Must have missed a piece there. Oh, I know why. This should be just called label, and this should be called type. Okay, again, I wasn't copying pasting the way I should have been. This should conclude it. This should give you the finished tutorial. We're right at the 1 hour mark, okay, since when I started this tutorial, or just under it. But this should now give you the ability to move around and collect prizes, okay, and keep your score as you do. And as you can see in the top corner, the prize count or the time remaining is running out. But I can also end this game by running out of bounds. It tells me how many points I got and how many my enemy got. And that concludes the big giant extras tutorial. Remember, you don't have to do all of it. All right, good luck, everybody.